Hi there. In this week's edition of The Wrap, we're looking at how ordinary South Africans are the future of this country. Plus, we remind you why we need to keep telling you about the legal travails of one Jacob Zuma well into the year 2100. So let's dive into your weekly news update, brought to you by Varashni Pillay and the explain.co.za team. First up is our take. South Africa is in your hands. Following last week's riots, it's been disheartening to watch our government leaders this week. Instead of making up for the failures to anticipate the looting or responding quickly, key government leaders have dissolved into petty fights, blame shifting, or disagreeing on a basic definition of what happened. The presidency says it was an insurrection. His defense minister later said that it wasn't. We won't bore you with much of the details, but it's startling to watch and makes us feel all the more alone. Which may not necessarily be a bad thing if we look at how South Africans have responded. Several commentators have made a key point. If this was genuine, widespread civil unrest, it would be raging now. You'd be barricaded in your home, worrying about your dwindling supplies. The fact is, the majority of South Africans said "not in my name" and chose not to join the looting. Some, like Soweto community leader Nhlanhla Lux, stood in the gap, spending 5 sleepless nights guarding Maponya Mall. And then there were many heartwarming stories of cleanups by cross-section of society. So, our leaders have failed us, but as ordinary citizens, we stood up. What does this mean? Firstly, our resilience does not justify their ineptitude. We should not have to do the work of government. The long-term solution is to keep pushing for the right leaders. And lucky for us, local government elections are coming up soon. It was scheduled for October, but a recent investigation by the IEC, chaired by the former Deputy Chief Justice, Dikgang Moseneke, has recommended it be postponed till no later than February, given the pandemic. Our main political parties leave a lot to be desired, but most of them are under pressure at the polls if the last results are anything to go by. South African voters aren't endlessly forgiving. But what are the alternatives? We're pretty excited about the recent legislative changes and movement around independent candidates. If ordinary citizens can take a waterworks from experiencing regular sewage spills to almost blue drop status, equip and prepare a field hospital for COVID patients, and quickly supply food and medicine to those devastated by looting, we can definitely run parts of government. Up next is the big story. We are looking at Jacob Zuma, the ghost of our past, present, and future. The year is 2100, 2100. The world has ended, the seas have risen, and cockroaches are now the main sentient of life form. And one of them is creating a news update for the wrap. On the former South African president, Jacob Zuma's latest attempt to avoid court. That's honestly how it feels every time we have to tell you yet another development from the man from Ngandla's legal battle. Will it ever end? Why do we have to keep talking about this? As much as we all like to move on, it's part of accountability and justice being served to tell you how his legal battles are playing out. A bit like a rash that won't stop itching until you remedy it. This week, Zuma's decades-long arms deal was set to go ahead before the Pietermaritzburg High Court. Zuma, as you know it, is facing 16 charges of fraud, corruption, racketeering related to the arms deal dating back to the 1990s. Zuma appeared virtually, but the case was yet again postponed to August. This time, Zuma applied for a postponement because he's in jail. Speaking of that, in a separate legal matter, we're waiting to hear from the Constitutional Court on its decision to effectively free President Zuma from prison. The highest court in the land heard from an exhausting 10 hours. Dalimbofu was a lot. of argument to rescind Zuma's 15-month sentence related to refusing to appear before the state capture inquiry about how he basically sold the country to the Guptas. The court has reserved its judgment, so Zuma has to stay in jail. Zuma's successor, though, is on a legal roll. The economic freedom fighters lost their bid this week to have bank records for Cyril's 2017 ANC election campaign made public. This is another legal victory for Ramaphosa after the Constitutional Court ruling earlier this month confirmed that Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane's report into the whole business was basically nonsense. As much as we've said before, the whole CR17 spat has been just another political battle, so this is fine. But the larger issue is that politicians should really disclose the funds that they get to run internal campaigns. On to our briefs, and first up is fear and violence as taxi wars grip Cape Town. Things may have been calmer in KZN and Gauteng this week, but Cape Town has been rocked by its own crisis, taxi violence, a dormant dispute between the Congress of Democratic Taxi Association, CADETA, and the Cape Amalgamated Taxi Association, CATA, over the Paarl to Belleville route flared up in an open warfare once more. There were some clashes about the route earlier in July, but within 4 days, the rival associations and government officials had signed a ceasefire agreement. If this sounds like war talk, that's probably because it is. Not even a day after signing a CADETA affiliated taxi driver was shot and killed in Khayelitsha on 13 July. And on 13th July, 3 more taxi drivers were shot dead in Khayelitsha. It's only escalated in the past week. Golden Arrow Bus Services had to limit its presence on the roads after one of its drivers was shot and injured, allegedly by taxi drivers. Reports suggest that up to 100,000 commuters have been left stranded. Both provincial and national government have been engaging with taxi associations to bring an end to the violence, but we think that government should be proactively investing more time into building a competent state-owned public transport system. Ready, set, go. Tokyo Olympics 2021. After a year-long delay, the Olympic Games officially start tomorrow in Tokyo. The event comes with some complications, though many participants have already tested positive for COVID-19. Officials seem determined to carry on regardless. Pandemic aside, we wish we could celebrate the 185 South African athletes representing us at the Olympics. We're hoping our star swimmer and cutie, remember that he accompanied a fan to her matric dance, Chad Leclos, will bring back a few more medals to make South Africa stand tall. Leclos is the first South African to bring home 4 medals from the Olympics. SA will participate in 17 of the 33 sports, including skateboarding, climbing, judo, and surfing. We wish our athletes the best. Bring it home. Climate crisis wreaks havoc across the world. From China to Germany, Belgium, India, and the United Kingdom, we've seen some worrying images in the past few weeks that show how the climate crisis is escalating. In China, 33 people were confirmed dead at the time of writing. They were victims of torrential storms and floods that ravaged the city of Zhengzhou since last week. Similar flooding images have emerged from Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. But on a larger scale, hundreds of people have died in these 3 countries and remain missing. Mudslides triggered by a heavy monsoon rains wreaked havoc in India's most populous city, Mumbai. More than 20 people are dead, and many homes and buildings have been submerged by the water. People living in London And other parts of England, meanwhile, are braving a heat wave as temperatures soar past 33 degrees. We know, it's easy to laugh at the English people suffering from heat waves that are our summary norm. But the country wasn't made for high temperatures. Some of its roads are literally melting. And now, confusingly, it's expecting hail. Scientists say that these are yet more warning signs of the Earth warming up. The good news is that the world's most powerful countries, from US to China, are indeed on board to tackle climate change. Now we just need them to hurry up. South Africa is yet again making strides in its vaccine rollout. Yesterday, we heard some exciting news. The Pfizer and BioNTech companies have partnered with the BioVac Institute in Cape Town to manufacture and distribute over 100 million doses of the vaccine to the African Union's 55 member states annually. BioVac will obtain the drug substance from facilities in Europe, and manufacturing of finished doses will begin in the year 2022, the company said in a joint statement. This is a huge win given the ongoing vaccine apartheid and the hoarding by developed countries rather. The news also follows last week's announcement that we will see Johnson & Johnson vaccines manufactured and distributed under license in South Africa. If you haven't noticed, South Africa is becoming an African pioneer when it comes to ensuring that vaccine equality is seen on the continent. And this is definitely something we love to see. As far as the vaccine rollout is concerned, we're doing way better than before. In recent days, more than 230,000 people have been vaccinated on a single day. The spike comes as more age groups are incorporated into the rollout. Last week, people over the age of 35 began registering to get their shot, and you've probably heard by now how enthusiastic the elderly millennial cohort is about the whole thing. This will hopefully put us back on track to reach the target to vaccinate, to reach our target to achieve herd immunity by 2022. So keep at it, y'all. By the way, the third wave is still in our midst, but things are beginning to slowly simmer down. On another sad story now, justice for Life Esidimeni victims seems closer to reality. It's been 5 years since the 144 mental health patients who were recklessly moved from Life Esidimeni facility to unprepared NGOs passed away. No one has been held accountable or criminally charged. The families of the deceased still cry in bereavement and seek closure. This week, however, an inquest into the tragedy began and put the Department of Health in the spotlight for its role in the patients' deaths. It was revealed that clinicians at the Life Esidimeni facility were warned the health department that moving the patients as part of a cost-cutting exercise could be fatal to them. But the department failed to heed the warnings, saying it was under pressure, political pressure, to carry out its task as government officials. Doctors at the facility, however, accused officials of intimidating them when they spoke out against moving the patients. The consequences were inevitable, they said, especially since most NGOs were ill-equipped to care for mentally ill people. A tragedy like Life Esidimeni could have easily been missed were it not for our stellar investigative reporters. The inquest, which is going on, will also ensure that dirty details are aired and hopefully hold the right people accountable. As always, we're grateful for the country where things like this we are grateful for a country where things like this aren't swept under the carpet and forgotten. It's taken a while to get the inquest started, but it's important to get closure and justice. On to another brief now, which is adulting 101. This is a friendly reminder to file your tax returns. Tax season opened on the 1st of July and will end on the 23rd of November. Log on to South African Revenue Services e-filing system to get it done. If you've contracted the COVID-19 virus in the last month, it's advisable that, depending on the severity of your symptoms, you wait at least 30 and up to 60 days before getting your shot. Check in with your GP to ascertain what's best for you. Part of being a responsible citizen is sharing information that has been verified and comes from a reliable source. With both the unrest on COVID-19, a lot of fake news has been circulating over WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. Some of it pretty convincing. The wrong information can create unnecessary stress, so read, research, and verify before sharing. The miseducation of Busi Mkhwebane. Any activist dreams of shaping our constitution in some way, but trust our bumbling public protector, Busisiwe Mkhwebane, to end up doing so completely by mistake. Quick explainer, the Office of the Public Protector is essentially an ombud for all government services. It's supposed to hold the government to account when citizens are failed. But the incumbent has used much of her time in the office to not so subtly support the pro-Zuma ANC faction. Her terrible findings, effectively fighting Zuma's battles, have been scathingly set aside by the courts so many times it's become a joke. Some critics have said that the errors she has made in law wouldn't be expected even of junior lawyers. That's why Parliament has now been talking about how it should go about maybe removing her from the position. It's been super cautious because this is unheard of. There's a reason that players can't arbitrarily remove the referee. So the process was carefully mapped out, and this week Parliament announced the committee members and chairperson. The ANC's Richard Gyanki, who will oversee the inquiry into the possibility of impeaching a sitting head of a Chapter 9 as designated by our constitution institution. This sort of inquiry is unprecedented. We'll keep you updated when the committee begins its nuts and bolts of its work, hearing evidence for and against Busi Mkhwebane. Kudos to the public protector. South African case law is much richer for her mistake. It's one giant leap for mankind. The billionaire space race continued this week, with Amazon founder Jeff Bezos venturing into space aboard a rocket built by his own company, Blue Origin. Bezos and his 3 co-passengers reached a maximum altitude of 66.5 miles. That's about 107 kilometers to those of us in South Africa. This, CBS News reported, is more than 4 miles above the internationally recognized 62-mile high boundary between the aerodynamically discernible atmosphere and space. Earlier this month, another billionaire, Virgin Atlantic founder Richard Branson, also flew into space. There were several takeaways from Bezos' trip. He was praised for taking 82-year-old Wally Funk along the ride. Her dreams of becoming an astronaut were repeatedly dashed thanks to rampant sexism, but she had the last laugh. She had the last laugh on Tuesday. Another common headline centered on Bezos' obscene wealth and criticized his obsession with space, while most Amazon employees barely scrape by. And then there was the rocket. Social media couldn't help but notice that Bezos was heading for lofty heights in, there's no other way to put it, a gigantic phallic object. Cue many jokes about size, endurance, and the male ego following a rather public divorce. Being the richest man in the world will probably eases the sting of any jokes, and we're sure Bezos is just as relieved the flight itself wasn't a gigantic cock up. That's it from us at The Rub, a product of explain.co.za, simple news for busy people. Remember to share the love, tell your friends to sign up for the updates on our website, which is www.explain.co.za /subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.